Hey YouTube, Mike the Alpha Hoarder here. Thanks for joining me. Alright, today's video is going to be back to basics. I just want to look at some old cards, enjoy them with you. I'll keep the controversial thoughts to a minimum, probably just at the end. Before I do that though, I do just want to open a couple of things just so I can give you a quick market update. Because I've been keeping track and it's been a little strange. So I would say the inventory slowed down since my last video. Around then, maybe in the week before that, but the last 2 or 3 weeks, very little stuff was coming to market, which was refreshing because, as I've mentioned in other videos, we had just day after day of new inventory. And I was actually starting to feel a little bit better about that, but then Kid Icarus dumped a whole new set of stuff. His auctions are running now. Bunch of alpha stuff, some sealed stuff, Arabian Nights even. And then I do continue to get contacts about large positions, including some that I just can't even take at the moment. So I don't know. I don't know where we're at. Earthquake. Take a quick look at this guy. Today's theme is red, so these are all going to be red cards. And then we're going to look at my red commons. So let's see, right now there are 15 of these listed on the market. Domestic and cardmarket.com. 3 of them are near mint. So if you're counting, that's about 1.5% of the entire print run of these are on the market. Priced between $1,200 and $5,000. Something like that. I saw seven recent sales between $900 and $1,700, and then a 9 quad plus went for $2,000. So that's actually an interesting data point that leads to what I was about to say. So these are priced, I mentioned, up to about $5,000, but a 9 quad plus just recently sold for $2,000. So we do still have a ton of inventory just sitting on the market. It's not really being absorbed. But I was starting to say, I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. And so, I mean, it's a good sign in that the sellers aren't pushing the prices down in order to find buyers. So a lot of people want to sell, but they don't seem super motivated to just dump. So that's why prices are staying so high, even though the inventory isn't moving. And so in some ways that's a good thing. You know, better that than the prices just getting pushed to nothing. But it's not good that the inventory isn't being absorbed. It sort of tells me 2 things. First, it tells me the market remains very shallow. There just aren't that many buyers. Second, though, is it tells me that if you've got people that are looking to sell all this stuff, but they're not in a hurry to sell it, that probably means they're not selling because of financial troubles or things like that. If they were, they would be pushing these prices down. It looks a lot more like people who just want to get out of the hobby. And, you know, they're not going to take a bath to do it, but they're ready to list everything and move on. So doesn't make me super happy. Okay, I remember this fork. Beautiful centering. Graded an 8 though. It seems pretty nice for an 8. Must be something on the surface I'm not spotting. I don't know, do you see it? Fork's always been one of my favorite cards. There are 15 of these on the market also. And just like the Earthquake, there's 3 near mints. So again, 1.5% of the entire print run of this particular rare is currently on the market, which is just crazy. I mean, if you go back to some of my videos when I'm sure I've opened an Earthquake before. I can't remember, but you know, there's almost never more than a couple listed. So this situation continues. 15 listed, priced between $1,200 and $6,300, but the average is somewhere in the $2,500 range. And I saw 7 recent sales between $1,000 and $2,000 for that guy. So anyway, that's the buy it now situation. The auction situation is pretty fickle, I would say. Some cards are ending just really low, and then some aren't. Some are holding their own. And I don't really know what to make of that difference, but I don't know. It feels very erratic. It feels very inorganic. Power Surge. Here's one I spent a while chasing back when I got my first copy. I remember that. I eventually found one through a private transaction with somebody whose collection I then bought out over the course of the following months. At the time, there really weren't many of these listed. There was maybe one, I want to say. But if you check today, you will find 19 copies listed. 19 copies. 2 of them are in near mint, and the pricing is between $500 and $2,000. Half a dozen recent sales in the $500 to $600 range. So anyway, that's my quick market update. Inventory is maybe a little bit less of a flood than it was before, but we are still getting inventory floods on the market. Prices are soft, auctions are soft in many cases, but we're not seeing them continuing to drop. It just feels more erratic. All right, so today I wanted to go through my commons binder. If you've been on the channel for a little bit, you know that I do this from time to time. I've been going in order. I hit the white, blue, the black. Next up is red. I do sometimes get storage questions, so that's why I'm just showing this thing. So some people ask me how I store my binders. This is a little thing that I 3D printed, and then I just size it to whatever sort of binder I'm putting in. So my commons binders all run about that thick. So I've got a few of these, and what I can do is just stand these up. I prefer to have them standing up rather than lying flat. And that's what I do. This holds them, provides some support up through the middle. And then they can just go on a bookshelf. So, I don't remember who asked me that, but there you go. All right. So today we will wander down memory lane and look at some red cards. Hold on, just prop that up a bit. All right, so Alpha, of course, only has 2 art treatments for each land. I believe both mountains are by Doug Schuler. These are among my favorite of the artwork. There's just something so vast about the way the mountain is drawn. I don't know why. The scale of it is significant, even though the art area is small. So we start with the basic land. Disintegrate. Awesome art. It deals X damage to one target. If the target dies, it's exiled, basically. Anson Maddox, look at that. Look at that artwork. Whew. This is what I love about the old cards. So, here, I'll read the whole thing. So, Disintegrate does X damage to one target. If target dies this turn, it is removed from the game entirely and cannot be regenerated. And then look what they make sure to clarify. Return target to its owner's deck only when the game is over. So, they wanted to make sure it was clear that you didn't have to shred the card and throw it out just because somebody disintegrated it. You still get to keep it when the game's over. Dwarven Warriors. So this was actually originally going to be called Dwarven Miner. But when the art came in and the armor, they changed it to Warriors. So, expensive little 1/1. Very accessible if you're looking for a common. Compared to other commons anyway. Dwarven Warriors is pretty easy to get a hold of. Earthbind. Epic card. Very cool art style, very raw. But this is not suitable for modern audiences, evidently. And so Wizards will not reprint this card. Between that and between a couple of mentions that Rudy's given it, this saw a pretty high spike. It's come down from that, but it is still probably trading higher than it should, considering the amount that are available right now. But fun card, I love it. Can't have too many Earthbinds. False Orders. This is a cool card. Seems like it'd be useful today, but you know, what do I know? There were only a handful of changes made between Revised Edition, between Unlimited and Revised. Obviously, they got rid of the power cards. They also got rid of False Orders. So if you're looking for a common, this one is a little bit fun because there's just less overall copies available because it doesn't appear in Revised Edition. Fireball. Mark Teeden, my favorite artist. Fireball does X damage total divided evenly, rounded down among any number of targets. Pay 1 extra mana for each target beyond the first. Definitely a playable card. I know this from the price. This guy is one of the more expensive commons, probably on par with Earthbind. Look at that thing. And then we have Fire Breathing. Simple, memorable. It's got the classic sort of Fraser texturing in the background. A lot of his cards have this. Cool looking card, fairly inexpensive. The Ogre. So I would say the Ogre, the Dwarven Warriors, and the Hill Giant are probably the most accessible rares. The most accessible commons in all of Alpha. I guess they're not that playable, or else, I don't know. But they've always been a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier to find. It's just a vanilla 2/2. For 3. I don't know why I have 2 pages of him. I thought I fixed that. I'll have to go back and rearrange. I tried that for a little while, but the binders were too thick, so. Anyway, good old Hill Giant. Not my favorite artwork. He's pretty ugly, but maybe he's supposed to be. Again, vanilla, 3/3. Nothing special. A little expensive to cast. Nice place to start if you want an Alpha Common. You can definitely find some Hill Giants in good condition. Heirloom Minotaur. This guy is very epic. This artwork is featured on all of the old display starter deck display boxes. So that gives him a little bit of a value boost. And then supposedly these lines aren't tattoos. They're supposed to be like ritualistic scars that were scratched into this guy's face. So that's creepy. Ironclaw. So what I like about this guy, this isn't something I've looked into enough, but so Anson signs all of his artwork. You'll see it. Did we just have any? Yeah, so he signs all of his cards. Anson 93. I don't know if that's clear. And just going by memory, like I said, I didn't check this, so maybe it's not that exciting. But just going by memory, I never see everything's 93 or later, as you would expect, because Alpha came out in 93. But this one is signed 92. So yeah, I've been meaning to check if that's noteworthy across the whole set, but I just think it's cool. So this card has artwork that predates the release by a year. Lightning Bolt needs no introduction. I got a bunch of these. I do have 2 pages of these. Yeah, and I got more than that. That large set I bought, that large collection I bought a couple months ago had 14 or 15 of these, so I picked up almost a whole other page just then. Chris Rush, beautiful blue in the red frame. Absolutely love it. Everyone loves Lightning Bolt. This card is priced to the level of a low-grade rare, even though it's a common. And it's played so much that it's harder to get in good condition, so condition rarity is steeper on this compared to other commons. And then, again, I don't play, so always check me when I say stuff about playing, but I imagine people want multiple copies, and that just makes it harder to find compared to any of the other commons, I would say. Off the top of my head, that's probably, I think out of all the commons, Lightning Bolt is the hardest one to find in good condition. Goblin Raiders. 1 for Vanilla 1/1. Classic card. I don't know why, but the artwork has always stuck with me. There's always certain cards that you just remember. When if you've had the experience of leaving the hobby and then coming back to it, I left the hobby for many years, and then you come back and you start looking at the cards and you just find that some of them stuck with you and some of them you remember, and there were little scenes in your head. For whatever reason, this one stuck with me. Red Elemental. For 1, it counters a blue spell being cast or destroys a blue card in play. And this should have been an interrupt, not an instant. Although I suppose it doesn't matter now. This is the counter to the blue Elemental Blast, and those cards are cool if you put them side by side. In the blue one, you got the guy shooting his water, and that's blue on the red background, whereas this is red on the blue background, and they're sort of both hitting at the top. It's a cool card, awesome art. Next we have Shatter. Classic Amy Weber. Not much to say. Really useful in an era with moxes and things like that. Probably still useful today, but what do I know? I just like the artwork. Stone Rain. This guy is impossible to find centered. So if you do see a really nicely centered copy, that is worth paying a little extra for. This is worse than most, but many of them are off right, left. But good old land destruction. Everybody's favorite thing. I like the dents in his body there. I don't know if those are holes. He's not bleeding. Maybe that was too gory. And then the red set concludes with the second version of the land. You see what I mean about that depth? It just feels vast. And those are the red commons in Alpha. Alright, so I did want to keep this video a little bit simple. Just revisit the old stuff. Try to rekindle the love. But I do want to make a comment at the end here. Just a final comment on the Magic 30 stuff I mentioned from my previous video. And I'm doing it at the end because I don't want to make more videos centered around Magic 30. It's a frustrating product still. So the whole situation is frustrating. I blame it for a lot of what's going on. I just don't want to be in that headspace. But I got a lot of great comments on my last video, which if you didn't see it, basically I suggested in there that it was not not a principle compromise. I put forward it was not a principle compromise. to buy Magic 30th cards now from the secondary market, especially if you can source them from people who got boxes, for free or whatever. And I showed in that video that I had picked up a couple cards, for artists I like, for global sets. And I remained with mixed feelings, and I had prompted for a little bit of feedback in the comments. And so what I just wanted to do in this moment here at the end of this video is I wanted to steelman both sides of the argument based on the feedback from the viewers, as I sort of continue thinking through this problem. So I'm just going to do that quick here at the end. The best counter case that I heard to what I said was sort of as follows. So while it is true that nothing purchased now will show up on Wizards books, a strong secondary market could show investors, the investor types, the potential that was in a product, like this, and it might encourage them to buy a similar one if Wizards does this again. In other words, the risk to investors goes down if the secondary market is strong, whereas the first time this product came out, the risk was very high. We had no idea what the supply would be. Moreover, we had no idea what the secondary market would look like, and it was a very expensive entry point. So if you're an investor type, it was perfectly reasonable to want to sit that one out. If the secondary market is strong, they might be less inclined to sit that out. Now that in and of itself doesn't matter, but if Wizards is sensitive to that signal, and then they conclude that there's enough confidence in the investor types in the secondary or because of the secondary market, they might conclude that this wouldn't flop if they tried it a second time, because the first time it flopped. And that might encourage them to try it again. And then the second thing is sentiment. So it's conceivable that participating in the secondary market of M30 normalizes the product too quickly. And if we too easily separate the cards from what they represent, I do think that separation is important. But if we do it too quickly and too readily and too widely, it could cause a sort of larger sentiment shift out of the negativity and sort of just back to neutral or even in favor of Wizards. And, on the one hand, that's a good thing, certainly for the strength of the hobby. But if Wizards, if their ass is taken off the fire, so to speak, once they're out of the hot water, they might feel free to go back to messing around with this kind of thing. And they might blunder back through this door or another one. So I would say that's the best counter argument to what I said, and those are good points. And then to re-steelman the argument that I made, and some comments agreed with it. The first time Wizards did this, it was a very high risk move because of what they were doing with the reserved list and so forth. But now it is way more risky. The fallout and the PR from that first stunt was a disaster. They're still getting downgraded by Wall Street because of the way they're treating the brand. And a lot of that comes back to M30. And so the penalty for trying this again and failing again is humongous. So their barrier to entry is now way higher. They need to be very, very, very confident that they could do the same thing again and get a different result. And not just a little bit different. It would have to be a runaway success. So there's that. Second, these cards, the M30 cards, they now exist in the larger secondary market, along with everything else, along with all this old stuff. The entire reason the Magic 30 product exists is because Wizards was attempting to tap into that secondary market equity. They wanted to grab some of the value that transactions related to these cards represented. And so no matter how strong the Magic 30 market becomes, it dwarfs in comparison to the vintage reserve list market, which is what had already caught their attention. There is no good reason to see why they would specifically look at the Magic 30 cards and decide that that is a better signal for their ability to tap the secondary market than they already have coming from the old cards. In other words, their incentive to try and do what they did is completely unchanged regardless of how M30 does, because there is still absolutely enormous equity that they can't get to. Only a tiny, tiny fraction of which is M30 cards, most of which is the reserve list stuff as it already stood. And then lastly, steel manning that side. Beyond ABU, there is just way less equity in general. Power 9 and the duels, that's almost all of it anyway, right? That's most of, if you look at all of the cards on the reserve list worth over $100, you've got the dual lands and the power 9 right there is like 25 of them or whatever. If you go into Arabian Nights, which playable staples are in there? I mean, what is it, 3 or 4? Antiquities is pretty much one, right? Probably a couple I'm not thinking of because I don't play. Legends is a couple. But the point is, there aren't that many cards, if it really comes down to it, that have this sort of playability appeal. There definitely are some. But I mean, if they were to just do Arabian Nights, say, how many cards in there are worth chasing? If they did all of the 4 horsemen at once, then maybe they've got a batch. Going on into the Silver Age, there's got to be another dozen cards worth something in there across all those sets. But compare that to ABU, to dual lands and power cards. They already went straight for the jugular. They don't really have that many other roads to take along these lines. So they would be taking on a much higher risk product, the penalty for failure on which is way higher, and they would be doing it for a much smaller potential tap of secondary market equity. So yeah, I wanted to tie that up a bit just by summarizing both sides of that argument as I continue to try to figure out how I feel about it. Both sides are compelling, but I'll leave it at that. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you at the next one. Thanks for watching today's video. If you're enjoying my content and you want to help the channel grow, consider wiring me a few $100,000, and you will be amazed when I turn it into cardboard. See you next time.